Hello students, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to look at the second part of the poem ABHISARA, the TRYST by Rabindranath Tagore. So let us get started. In our previous video we had stopped at this line, the storm growled from the corner of the sky and the woman trembled in fear. So I had pointed out that this particular line contains a personification. The storm growled is an instance of personification, and we had also explored the ideas and the symbols present in the first part of the poem, where we had come to this conclusion that monsoon was symbolic of Vasavdatta's mind, which was darkened by the worldly and earthly desires. So let us look at the next part of the poem then. A year had not yet passed. So after this particular incident, after the incident that we read in the previous video, a year had not yet passed. That incident, that encounter between Upagupta and Vasavdatta took place in August, and this was April now. It was evening of a day in April in the spring. Please underline spring. Spring is also very symbolic. We will come into we will look in detail the ideas that are expressed through spring. For now, just underline the word. The branches of the wayside trees were full of blossoms. So, the branches, the trees that were present by the sides of the lane, it was all covered with blossoms, means it was covered with flowers. Gay notes of a flute came floating in the warm spring air from afar. So, along with the warm spring air that was coming from a distance, the warm air brought in the cheerful tune of flute. So it was a beautiful day. Everything was beautiful. Everything was serene. The citizens had gone to the woods for the festival of flowers, and everyone was engaged in some sort of festivity. The city folks, they all were out to celebrate the festival of flowers, and they had all gone to the woods. From the mid-sky gazed the full moon on the shadows of the silent town. The town today was also quite silent, but it was not dark like it was during monsoon. There was full moon, and the moon, here also we find an instance of personification, where the full moon was gazing down at the town, at the silent town. The young ascetic was walking in the lonely street. So Upagupta was once again walking in the lonely streets of the city, of the town, while overhead the lovesick koels uttered from the mango branches their sleepless plaint. So, and while he was walking, what did he hear? He could hear on the overhead branches, he could hear the koels. They were what? They were love sick, that is, they were love lorn. They were pining for their beloved, and while they were pining for them, they were letting out a lament. Plaint means a kind of lamentation or complaint. They were letting out. So they were calling out to their beloved. So it was a beautiful day. It was the spring. The season spring always symbolized love. It symbolized renewal. Spring was like a promise of renewal. Upagupta passed through the city gates and stood at the base of the rampart. So he was now walking out of the city, and he walked through the city gates, and he stood for a while at the base of the rampart, means the wall that surrounded the city. What woman lay at his feet in the shadow of the mango grove? So he could suddenly see a woman who was lying down amidst a group of trees, and she was lying down in the shadow of the mango grove, struck with the black pestilence. Look at the contrast that is being drawn. There is beauty everywhere, there is festival going on everywhere, but here lies a woman who is struck with the black pestilence, means with the black plague, with a disease. Her body spotted with sores of smallpox, and her entire body was covered with sores, with marks of smallpox. She had been hurriedly driven away from the town to avoid her poisonous contagion. So it was quite evident that she was driven out of the city hurriedly. She was driven out of the town quickly to avoid her poisonous contagion, means contamination. In order to restrict the spread of disease, she was hurriedly thrown out of the town. The ascetic sat by her side, took her hand on his knees, and moistened her lips with water and smeared her body with balm. So the young ascetic, he sat beside her, took her head on his knees, on his lap. He dampened, that is moistened or soaked her lips with water, and he covered her body. Smeared means covered her body with balm, with some kind of ointment that would give her relief. Who are you, merciful one? So the woman asked the woman asks that, who are you, so compassionate, so filled with kindness that you were not afraid to touch my wound? The time at last has come to visit you, and I am here, Vasavdatta, replied the young ascetic. So this is very important. This entire last stanza is important because it indicates Upagupta's fulfillment of the promise that he had made one night in August. It was the fulfillment of the promise, and it also shows that Upagupta, if you look at the detailed description of the spring, I had asked you all to underline the word spring. It shows that Upagupta did not only walk through those calm streets, those silent streets, but he also brought in with him the calm that was needed for Vasavdatta. And once Vasavdatta was free from all her worldly desires, when she was completely bereft of her beauty, that is when she finds true emancipation. That is when she finds freedom, and that is when she could be united, or she could again meet Upagupta. And this is very important because it again reiterates, it again talks about the Buddhist meditation that I had mentioned right at the beginning of the poem. It talks about loving kindness. It resembles the idea of compassion, where Upagupta willingly as a monk tries to relieve Vasavdatta of all her pains. So it truly, the poem is based on this Buddhist meditation of metta or maitri that I had explained right at the beginning of this particular poem. Now I had mentioned certain themes, certain symbols in the poem, like the monsoon sky. Here also, the beauty of nature. There is a contrast between the beauty of nature and the condition of Vasavdatta. The spring that is being described in such detail in the poem could also indicate Vasavdatta's mind, her final state of mind, when she is completely bereft of her beauty, when she no longer holds her beauty or any other worldly possession for that matter, and she finally attains the calm, she finally attains enlightenment, she finally is free from all her desires. Since we have arrived at the end of the poem, now let us note down certain important points that we can gather from this part of the poem. The first being the spring, the symbolic meaning of spring. So we can write spring symbolizes the promise of renewal and also indicates the reunion between lovers. So this is very important. First is the spring symbolism that we find in the poem. Spring symbolizes the promise of renewal and also indicates a reunion between lovers. It is a season that is closely associated with love. Now, the part where we look at pestilence-stricken Vasavdatta's body, we see that it is covered with sores, and there is a stark contrast between the nature, the spring, and Vasavdatta, her physical features. Now we come to the final part of the poem, which is very, very important. The ascetic sat by her side, took her head on his knees. These lines where we find that there is the fulfillment of the promise. Upagupta fulfills his promise and relieves Vasavdatta of her suffering. Here we can also add, I had pointed out that here we can also add another important observation. We had previously compared Vasavdatta's mind to the murky sky of monsoon of August, where we had said that the upheaval of nature is indicative of Vasavdatta's mind, which is darkened by earthly desires. Now towards the end of the poem, we see that once she, here is Vasavdatta, is bereft of her beauty, she is not only bereft of her beauty, she was initially, when we first find her in the poem, we see her, she is wearing a lot of jewels. We see that she is dressed in a certain way, and now here we see that she is bereft of her beauty and all other worldly possessions. All other worldly possessions, once she is bereft of her beauty and all other worldly possessions, she finds peace and true emancipation. Emancipation means freedom. So she is free from all kinds of worldly possessions. She is free from all kinds of worldly desires, possessions, and she is completely bereft of her beauty. So this is when she finds peace and true freedom. So though her body is stricken with pestilence, though her body is covered with sores, yet her mind is at peace, and it is as calm and as beautiful as the spring sky, as the spring nature. So we can draw these references These are the points that we can draw from the poem, and I will tell you, I will request you all to pay attention to these analysis, to these observations, and utilize it in your answers. Now, I have made these observations and I have delved deeper into these symbols mainly because the pattern of questions in ISC is undergoing a drastic change. Now, the council expects the students to have their own thought, to have their own ideas included in their answers. So, these observations, these application or these understanding of these symbols now have become very important. So please follow these descriptions, follow these instructions. Do not only remember the textual details, but also try to remember the symbols and the inner or symbolic, deeper metaphorical meanings of the poems. And if you have any question regarding the content of the poem, please feel free to write it in the comment section. If you have any doubt, please ask. I would get back to you all as soon as possible. If you like my work, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And thank you for watching. I will again meet you all in the next video. Thank you.